Okay, never mind. You know what, actually, if I could get, let's see here. Javier, actually, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. Could you open up the PowerPoint? Thank you. Sorry about that. Not sure why it's not working for me. Let me make you host again. Hold on. There you go. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate that. Okay, so welcome to Law School 101. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but these things happen, unfortunately. So you have Javier's contact information. He's the Assistant Director of Admissions and Student Engagement. His phone number is right there, and his email address is right there. And next, you have your next LSAT on November 7, 2020. And if you could register by September the 23rd, it'd be much appreciated, because that way you can actually take the LSAT on November the 7th. Okay, so go to the next slide. Okay, so let me give you kind of an introduction, actually, to the history of San Joaquin College of Law. In 1969, a group of attorneys and a few judges who later became judges decided that the Central Valley desperately needed its own law school. Because back then, if you wanted to go to law school, you pretty much either had to go to the Bay Area or to Los Angeles, because those were pretty much the only law schools around. The idea then is that in 1969, they founded San Joaquin College of Law. And for the past 51 years now, this year, SJCL has been consistently instructing students and has been a very, very large influence in the legal community for the entire Central Valley, not just for Fresno County, but for Kern, Madera, Kings, Mariposa even, Tulare, all around. The idea is that we are very, very much tied to the Central Valley, in that, we provide a number of services and a number of other things that actually support attorneys practicing here in the Central Valley. The primary thing we have is what's called the New American Legal Clinic, which is it's an immigration clinic where students assist attorneys who are on staff with actually performing immigration cases and actually assisting people in getting residency or in getting citizenship, and that's what they do. In fact, last year, I believe they helped almost 200 people actually with all sorts of types of immigration issues and all sorts of immigration problems. So, and of course, free of charge, because it is part of the New American Legal Clinic. In addition, we also provide MCLE, which is continuing education units for attorneys here. And we also offer the Senior Law Day, which is to say we provide, during normal times when there's not COVID roaming around, assistance and some legal advice for the elderly in our community. And lastly, the library itself, which is normally open to the public. It's not right now because of COVID, but things will be open soon. In addition, 32% of the attorneys in the Fresno area are SJCL alumni, and 33% of the attorneys in the Fresno area who identify with a minority group are also SJCL alumni, and 38% of all the women attorneys in the Fresno area are SJCL alumni. We have alumni who are federal judges, state judges. We have alumni who are partners. We have alumni who are pretty much all over the Central Valley and are working at law firms all throughout the entire Central Valley. We have district attorneys, we have public defenders, we have a wide variety of people who assist and who serve the law in many, many different capacities. So it's a reputation that, we've taken 50 years to gain, and, we are very, very proud of it, actually. If I could have the next slide, Javier. So the question is why would you go to law school? I will say this, law school is not easy. It's not easy for anybody. You have to think of law school as something beyond college. It's something, even beyond most graduate level programs. Think of it as being analogous basically to going to medical school, and just in terms of the amount of time and the amount of effort you have to put in order to get a law degree. The thing is, though, is that in life, you will notice that frequently, the more you are challenged and the more challenges you overcome, the more you grow and the more you develop as a person. And that is ultimately the primary reason why a lot of people go to law school. Yes, of course, it's employment. And yes, of course, you have to, generally speaking, go to law school to become a lawyer, with very, very few exceptions. So that's part of it. But the other thing is that there's also an element of personal growth to it, an element of personal development. The idea that you have challenged yourself and that you have succeeded where you didn't think you really could. And that really is a tremendous thing. And I can certainly attest to that in going through law school and then passing the bar exam and everything else. It is definitely a growth experience. Now you'll notice in the inset on this particular slide, there's the map of the state of California, and you'll notice we're located in that star in the center. You'll notice all around that star is pretty much nothing. And you'll notice all the other red dots located primarily in Southern California and in and around the Bay Area and Sacramento. That's actually the distribution of all the law schools in the state of California. So as you can see, we, for about a 100-mile, 125-mile radius, are essentially the only law school in town. So we can offer things, and we have, I don't want to say a lock on the Central Valley, but the thing is we have a tremendous amount of influence in the local legal community simply because we are here. We are not from the Bay Area. We are not in Los Angeles or Orange County or San Diego. We are here. We are Central Valley people. We are a Central Valley school, and we are a Central Valley institution now after 50 years. The thing to also remember is because of our location and because, we are, fairly well insulated from competing law schools, we have a tremendous amount of networking and contacts available for the local legal community. Unlike Los Angeles and unlike San Diego, I practiced law in Los Angeles and Orange County for about 7 or 8 years. What I can definitely tell you is that it is an incredibly competitive market in those places simply because there are more lawyers. Here in Fresno and in Tulare, Madera counties, those areas, it's a little bit different. The idea is, the thing is that there are positions open almost all the time. And that's really unusual. Normally, when you're in the Bay Area, Sacramento, Los Angeles, you really have to fight tooth and nail in order to get your first position. Here in Fresno, not as much. And the reason why is because, we are generally speaking, at least from a legal point of view, an underserved community. And that works to your advantage, especially as a recent law school grad, because it allows you to not only get a position, but it also allows you to have increased earning potential because, let's face it, attorneys on average make more money than the average person. Now, there's a lot of work to earn that money, don't get me wrong, but I would like to say that, we do have increased earning potential. The other thing that is really, really nice about a law degree is that the law is everywhere. Every industry, every field, everything you can think of involves the law to one degree or another. And frankly, that trend is not going away. It doesn't matter what field or career you're currently working in. I guarantee you the law has been involved to one degree or another, be it everything from the policies that govern how you are employed to how you're paid, the policies that are the rules that deal with, the products that you manufacture or that you help to manufacture, the services that you provide to customers. All of these things, the law is heavily involved in all of those areas. And that really is why the law is, in many ways, kind of a backstage pass into the inner workings of American society. And that is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity in order to develop and to create essentially your own career. And lastly, of course, even if you never practice law at all, it certainly never hurts to understand how the law works, to be able to negotiate contracts, to be able to speak with people, and to actually make a legal opinion that is backed up by evidence, as backed up by your own research into the law in order to influence how you make a decision. You know, for instance, if you wanted to form your own corporation, or if you wanted to deal with preparing a will for a family member, all of those sorts of things, having a legal background is only to your benefit. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Javier. So what is law school like? Well, I will tell you this. Law school is difficult. It is more difficult than college. It's more demanding than most grad schools. I actually have 2 master's degrees, one in library science and one in the fine arts. And I will tell you, law school is much more rigorous, just in terms of the amount of effort you have to put in and the amount of focus you have to put in order to do well, in order to, you know, just to kind of get through it. The thing is that it is a lot of studying. Does that mean you cannot go to law school if you have young children or if you work full-time or anything else? Absolutely not. In fact, our valedictorian from last year had 3 children and worked, and she was our valedictorian. So the idea that, you know, that it is so much work that it will absolutely bury you, that is simply untrue. It is a lot of work compared to that, and you have to really want and to really desire to go through with it. It's not something that you should just kind of take up on a whim. You need to take it seriously. However, if you take it seriously, you will absolutely do well. There is no reason why you shouldn't do well if you put in the time, if you put in the effort. So, what are the 4 different skills that we actually test or that we actually teach in law school? Number 1, we teach substantive law and theoretical skills. So that is essentially, substantive law means, for instance, the law dealing with contracts, or the law dealing with criminal law, or the law dealing with constitutional law, things of that nature. So we will actually teach you the substantive law and the theoretical skills that we would use in order to apply that substantive law to real life situations, and of course, to the bar exam itself. Because let's face facts, if a law school does not prepare you for the bar exam, then the law school really hasn't done its full job. In addition, we will also teach you practical skills, such as writing, research, things that I teach, that I specialize in. And in addition, how to trial practice, negotiation, or what we also call oral advocacy, which is to say how to argue orally in court, how to prove your arguments. You set them up, you introduce evidence, and then you fundamentally argue your case in order to get the result that you are seeking. In addition, we also teach the ethical principles and the standards of the law, which is to say they are the guidelines that actually determine how attorneys act. I know attorneys have a bad reputation for being unethical and that sort of thing. It's actually not true. We actually have a fairly extensive set of guidelines that govern our behavior as we practice. And that is one thing and that is definitely a thing that we emphasize here, because the decisions you make as an attorney impact people's lives. They impact your clients' lives. They impact your clients' families. They're very, very significant decisions, and you have to take that very seriously. And the last and most important thing I think we teach is the idea of a problem-solving method of thought. In other words, everything in law stems from the idea that people come to you with a problem. They come to you with a situation, and they seek your advice. They seek your help in resolving that problem. It could be something as simple as, how do I get out of a traffic ticket? Or it can be something very, very complicated. Like, for instance, my wife was injured in a medical procedure at a hospital, and she's now crippled and unable to work. What do I do? What do we do in order to gain some manner of restitution for that injury? Those are the issues you deal with as a lawyer. And as a lawyer, you have to solve those problems. You think about what it is you are dealing with. You research the law, then you apply the law and argue the law in order to advocate for your client's position and for your client's best interests. That is fundamentally what you do as an attorney. So if you're not interested in that, perhaps law school may not be for you. So let's talk about accreditation. So SJCL is absolutely accredited. It is true we are not an ABA accredited school. However, if you'll notice on the blue pyramid to the bottom of this slide here, where we are is actually in the light blue or the third level section here, which is to say we are cleared by WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and COBE, which is a regional accreditation for law schools. What this entitles you to do is if you graduate from SJCL, you are automatically entitled to take the California State Bar. The other thing is that you will also be eligible for financial aid, which is something that a number of other schools, who are law schools, cannot provide you. So theoretically, you can apply for financial aid, and you can, then defer your payments, such as I've done, as you kind of go through your life. The other idea is that since we're COBE and WASC accredited, you do not have to take essentially the baby bar, which is to say it's a kind of an entry level examination that tests a handful of the topics or subjects that are actually on the big bar exam that occurs after you complete law school. You don't have to do that if you go to SJCL. So this level of accreditation is actually very, very good. And in fact, it definitely, provides you basically with pretty much all the benefits, especially if you're of an ABA school, especially if you're going to remain here in the state of California. Okay, next slide, please. Will you get a solid education at SJCL? The answer is yes, unequivocally yes. If you put in the work, if you pay attention, if you work hard, if you are diligent, you will absolutely receive a solid education, every bit the equal that you would get at another ABA institution, or certainly at any other WASC or COBE accredited institutions. More than 70% of all of our graduates in the last 50 years have passed the California bar examination. Moreover, we have the second highest bar pass rate of all California bar accredited law schools, which is no mean feat, actually, because we're competing against, roughly 24 or so other schools. And as you can see here, this is the 2019 minimum bar examination pass rates. So what you can see here is you can see a listing of pretty much all the law schools that are essentially on our level, in other words, that are accredited in the state of California. And our pass rates are circled here in red. So as you can see, we had a 77.4% in 2018 and a 72.4% in 2019. There's only one school that beat us, and they just barely edged us out, and that's Cal Northern School of Law. And frankly, we've been kind of going back and forth and trading neck and neck with them in recent memory. So the thing is you will get a solid education. Moreover, you will also get an education that will permit you to pass the California State Bar Exam, which is still the hardest bar exam in the United States, with the exception of the federal patent law bar exam, which is an entirely separate thing designed purely for patent attorneys. Other than that, California is harder than New York, it's harder than Texas, it's harder than anywhere else, really. So the fact that we can pass, in very recent memory, almost 80% of our graduating class is very impressive, and it's nothing to sneeze at. If I can get the next slide, please. So, who goes to SJCL? It's our student body. Who is here? Who works here? Who attends? Those sorts of things. So, our student body is primarily, and here at least half identify with minority groups to one degree or another. And in fact, as I understand it, a majority of our students are first generation college students. So they generally will range in ages from 22 to 50. We definitely cater to night students. We definitely cater to students with children, students with full-time jobs, students with part-time jobs, and students who have just recently graduated college and who just want to proceed with the next level in their, the next chapter in their lives. Broadly speaking, we admit between 70 to 100 students per year. This past year, fall 2020, we admitted 81. That's slightly large. Generally, we're usually in about the high 70s, give or take. But, you know, in the past, it could certainly be more than that. In terms of faculty, we have 10 full-time faculty and approximately 30 adjunct faculty. In order to become faculty here, either adjunct or full-time, you have to have a law degree, and broadly speaking, you also have to be a member of the California State Bar. A handful of exceptions, but you absolutely must be a member of a state bar. The thing about the environment here is that we are a very collaborative environment, which is to say, students work with their instructors. I know this personally as an instructor. I am constantly in touch with my students, even now through Zoom because of COVID. But even now, I'm constantly in touch with them in order to answer their questions, to explain concepts to them, to also to give advice. About other courses and about other subject areas. And it could be very well because of my unique position as a librarian as well, so I also provide information in general, but that's part of what we do here. And almost every instructor that I know here is willing to meet with students after hours to go over things, to give students supplemental examinations, quizzes, practice, any type of practice, work, anything that we can do that would assist the student in comprehending what we're trying to teach. We're all very approachable as faculty, and we all, really are here because we want to help you learn. We are here because we want you to succeed. The flip side of that coin is the collaboration that you have with other students, and it is tremendous. Here, students work together. They build one another up. Student groups are incredibly common. Obviously, if those students who would rather study on their own, they're more than welcome to do so. But by and large, students here are not trying to tear one another down. That's not what we do here. That's not what our purpose is here. Our purpose is that everyone can succeed. And in fact, if we can assist one another, we do so. That is really what we're here for, and that is really kind of a breath of fresh air from most other law schools. Very few other law schools have this same type of atmosphere. So let's talk more numbers. So generally speaking, you have to complete 86 units here at SJCL in order to graduate. Now you have essentially 3 different options in terms of completing those 86 units. You can complete them in 3 years, which is a greatly accelerated program. You can complete them in 4 years, which is the normal pace of the program. Or if you need to take it a little more slowly, you certainly can with a 5-year program. Unfortunately, you can't take it anything longer than 5 years because that is a California State Bar rule that prohibits that. So your law school has to be done within a 5-year period. And if we go to the next slide. So your first year of law school, basically you're going to have either a day section or you're going to be a night section student. Again, it's 86 units. So your first year of law school, what you're going to do is everyone has to complete 10 units per semester. So let's take a look at the day schedule up top. You'll notice here that the schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So on each of those 4 days, you will have at least a class. We do not have classes on Fridays. Even in the evening section, we do not have classes on Fridays. The day section, the primary difference between the day section and the night section is that contracts and torts is divided and broken up into 2 separate, contract torts and civ pro, are divided up into 2 sessions per week. Whereas if you look at the evening schedule, you'll see that it's 1 3-hour class on Monday, 1 3-hour class on Tuesday, 1 3-hour class on Wednesday. And then legal methods, though, legal methods is always a 3-hour class. And generally speaking, it tends to be a little less than that. And the idea behind it is for units. So in other words, you would be starting as a day student, you started at 11 a.m., and you're essentially done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday by about 3 in the afternoon. If we move over to Thursday for legal methods, you start at 11, you do have a break, and then you start with legal methods to about 4:30. Evening classes are all a little bit different in that evening classes, it's pretty much 6:30 to 9:30, Monday through Thursday. Either way, you're taking 10 units. If you decide to register and to take the 3-year program, what will happen is beginning in your second year, you will actually take more than 10 units per semester in order to kind of make up that gap into 86 units by the time you finish your 3rd year. I think there was a question. I don't know if you wanted to answer that, Javier.
Yeah, it's Jacqueline, and she's asking, can you do night school and be able to finish in 3 years, Professor?
Yes, you can. And in fact, we've had many students do so. I will say that it is a challenge. There's no question about it. But can you finish law school in 3 years and be a night student? Absolutely. Just understand that you're going to be taking a lot of classes over the summers between your first year and your second year and your 3rd year. So with that in mind, you absolutely can do it. Yes. Okay, so here's our, Okay, so who do we admit to law school? Well, generally speaking, if you have a GPA remember, it's a GPA from either a BA or a BS or an AA or an AS. You don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree in order to attend law school. If you have a GPA of 3.0 or above, and you have an LSAT score of 150 or above, generally speaking, you're automatically going to be admitted into SJCL. Let's say you're in a situation where you are close to those numbers, but you're not quite there. Well, in that case, what happens is that we will also look at, and I sit on the admissions committee, so I do speak from experience, we will look at other components of your application to take things into consideration. For instance, your work history, your academic history, your personal life, any other things that would, potentially differentiate you and indicate that you have the capability and the maturity and the discipline to get through law school. And we certainly let in people who do not have 3.0s, and we certainly let in people who do not have a 150 score or above on the LSAT. That is, we absolutely do that, and we do it fairly regularly. The thing is you have to be able to demonstrate additional capabilities, additional talents, additional discipline, additional skills that would make us, that would convince us that you would be ready to be here and that you are ready to succeed in law school and ready to pass the bar exam. I'm sorry, I just saw a question come up, Javier.
Yeah, so the next question is from Laura, and it is, how many hours of study per class per night is suggested?
Okay, this is an interesting question, and in fact, it varies depending on what level of school you're in. For instance, your first semester of law school tends to be the semester you study the hardest in terms of hours. My recommendation, especially just starting out, like most of my 1L students are right now, because we started up in August, is I recommend 3.5 to 4 hours of outside study for every 1 hour in class. So that is kind of the initial ratio. As your first semester, the first fall semester wears on, so we get closer and closer towards November, I would say that could drop down to about a 3-to-1 ratio. So that means 3 hours outside of class for every 1 hour in class. Once you get to the spring of your first year, that ratio again could dip down to somewhere between 3 and 2.5 hours per every hour in class. Your second and third years, generally speaking, the ratio of study time outside of class to study time inside of class, I almost never recommend it going below 1.5 hours to 2 hours outside of class for every hour in class. The reason why is because law school depends on a lot of reading, and not just a lot of reading, but you have to read and you have to be able to comprehend what you have read. So you're going to have to do that relatively slowly. And in order to do that, what would end up happening is that, you have to put in the time to do that. Moreover, for your first, second, and potentially last years, you will also have writing classes. So you'll have additional projects that you're going to have to complete, and those do take extra hours. So you always have to factor all that in. And the last thing you have to factor in is the outlining. In other words, the preparations that you have to make in order to take the final exams at the end of every semester. Because unlike college, in law school, the overwhelming majority of your classes will be the grade itself will be based on your performance on the final exam. That's an unusual thing, and it puts a fairly large amount of pressure on your performance at the end of the semester. So what is incumbent upon you then as a law student is you need to prepare early, very, very early in the semester, and you need to constantly maintain that level of preparation to get ready for the end of the semester, because there's a whole lot of material that every class will throw at you. And that is just how law school works. So I hope I didn't go into overkill, but that's essentially, the amount of time that you would need to prepare and that you need to dedicate in order to do well in law school.
You got another question here. It says, just to confirm, did you say that if one meets the 3.0 and the 150 outside score, that they are automatically accepted? And I guess there's a caveat to that, correct?
There is a caveat to that. I mean, of course, we will always look into your background and everything else. I mean, there are certain other things that will disqualify you. Generally speaking, if you have those two numbers, you will, of course, you generally will be, I don't want to say fast track, but you have gotten over a lot of hurdles, let's put it that way, towards admission. Obviously, there are other things within an application that could potentially prevent you from coming in, even if you have a good GPA and an LSAT score. So the thing is as the admissions committee, we will look into all of those things, and we do consider that. And we have had situations where we have students who have very good numbers and who have very good LSATs, but for whatever reason, there are other things going on in their lives that perhaps indicate that maybe law school is not necessarily the best fit. So, okay, so basically to go on, bachelor's degree in any major. If you have an AA or an AS, you have to have at least 60 qualified units, or if you want to qualify for graduate federal loans, in other words, you have to have 72 units in terms of towards your associate's degree. But we've had many, many people here who have graduated. In fact, we've had even faculty members here who only have associate degrees and who have graduated very, very highly within their class. So the fact that you only have an AA or an AS do not worry about that. We look beyond that. It's not just about having a bachelor's. Okay, next slide, please.
So we have another question here before we move on.
Oh yeah, sure.
Mana, is the Khan Academy a good place to study for the LSATs? Are there any other websites that you would recommend? Would you like me to take that one?
Sure, if you would.
Yeah, okay. So Anna, Khan Academy actually partnered with LSAC, and as a result, they gave them about, I believe if I remember correctly, 4,000 questions that were originally on the prior LSAT examinations. Therefore, that's as close and as the best type of material that you could get. That being said, it's also free, and it is a great place to study for the LSAT, because not only does it give you a baseline of where you are, but it also helps you, right? Because it'll be able to pinpoint if you're needing speed, because at the end of the day, the LSAT it's a speed exam, right? It's an endurance exam. So they do kind of help you with that. They help you with whether you need more help in the reading comprehension or the analytical games or the logic games. So it is a great place to start. The next place that I would probably say that you could do is attend one of our LSAT prep nights. We have some. You can just go to our website and register for them. They are taught by a professor. And that's where you could actually ask a person, right, who's taught the LSAT before questions. We do not go over the reading comprehension because it's just not, there's not enough time in the 2-hour free prep exam that we do there. But we do go over the analytical questions of the LSAT there. So those are ones that, generally speaking, people have the most trouble with. So it is a great place to start. So you got those two places, and you can also buy books as well that they sell out there. So with that being said, that's what I would say about that. And then also I have another question here. When are admission deadlines? So we'll actually get to those in just a bit. They're just a little bit later in the slide.
Okay, so I guess we'll just continue on then. So these are the things that you have to have in terms of your application checklist. And I think now actually, Javier, is when you take over, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, then.
Thank you, Professor. All right. So the committee's going to be looking for a few things, right? And one of those things that we have to get ready and prepare for the committee is obviously a law school application. So you would go onto our website at sjcl.edu and start your application. You do not have to finish it. Once you sit down, you simply just go ahead and start it, and you would be completing your documents as you go along and starting your application there. The next step is to register with alsac.org and register for the LSAT, right? So you would also pay the fees to LSAC for the LSAT as well. And in LSAC, it's a two-pronged type of application, right? So you're gonna have one application with us, and you're gonna have also an account with LSAC. So just keep that in mind. There's two different areas where you have to go fill out. Once you have that completed, you also have to pay for the Credential Assembly Service Report, which is provided by LSAC. You would need to submit official transcripts from your undergraduate institution to SJCL and to LSAC. So that's two separate sets of transcripts that you will be submitting. Now, the ones for us, we just need them from, say you went to Fresno State or UC Merced, we just need those institutions transcripts, official transcripts, right? For LSAC, you will need to submit any transcripts of any institution that you've attended within the United States and Canada. So please, be mindful of that. They do need, if you took one class at a community college somewhere and then the rest of the time went to, four-year institution, you have to get transcripts to LSAC from that institution as well. So that being said, the next step would be a personal statement. The committee, on top of the application, the LSAT score, and they're also going to want to know, who are you? Why do you want to go to law school? More importantly, it's the place where you're going to speak, right? They want to hear your story. You're going to speak to the committee of who you are and what type of challenges have you faced in higher education. And once you face those challenges, how have you overcome them, right? So they want to kind of get the feel for your grades, right? Facing challenges and not letting them stop you along the way. So one example that I used when I wrote my personal statement, I spoke about, one, being a first-generation college student, being the first in my family, and then two, about how I came back from Iraq as an Iraq war veteran, injured, but still, right, obstacles, and I didn't let them impede my ability to go through my education here. So those are struggles of mine, right? Everybody has a story. Even though you think you might not have a story, everyone has a story, believe me. So just make sure that you tell your story, right? And that's where they find out your grades. That is very important. Another thing that I like to say about the personal statement, it's 1 or 2 pages long, but make sure that somebody's reading it for grammar and make sure that it flows, because law school is a big reading and writing institution, and the committee will look at this as a writing sample as well. So make sure you have somebody definitely look over it. You yourself look over it as well. The next piece of the application that we'll be needing is 3 letters of recommendation, right? So we'll need letters of recommendation from professors, preferably. So if you are straight out of college right now, obviously you have access to your professors. Right now is the best time to start asking for those letters of recommendation because it takes a while, right? So if you're looking for fall 2021, you definitely want to get the letters of recommendation. Let them know that you want to go to law school so they start. We have a template that we could share with you. So if you could email myself or our director of admissions, Dan Steele, we would get you that template on what needs to be in there. But mainly the letters of recommendation is that they know you and that they could support that you are a good candidate for law school, right? If you are too far apart from law school, which it happens, right? Get them from your supervisors, your colleagues, anything like that would do. Also, if you do know people in the legal community, attorneys or judges, those are great letters as well too. So that is the next step there. Sorry about that. Okay. This next portion here, that is the application with us. So when you go to our website and you go to apply now, this is how it will look, right? This is my application there. You're simply going to start your biographic information and you'll just go down the list there. So as you can see here with the cursor, you have biographic information, education, legal education, and you simply go down the line. Once it turns green, that means it's done. When you submitted all your documents, right, you could go ahead and review and hit submit, and your application will be ready. Now, along the way of completing this application for fall 2021 or 2022, whatever year it is that you're here tonight wanting to join us, we are always available. Myself and Diane Steele, the Director of Admissions, we are always made available. So for any questions you might have, it's a lot of information we're going to give tonight. Feel free to send us an email, give us a call, or we could even set up a Zoom meeting with you all so that we could make sure that you understand the process. Right, and then I talked about the second portion, right, which is the alsac.org. You would go to alsac.org and you will go to login as you can see here. You're going to do JD candidate, and that's where you put in your biographic information. That being said, this is where you also register for the LSAT exam and pay for your CAS assembly service, right, that we talked earlier about. And then there's one extra fee that they charge as well, which is the law school report. So just to be clear right now, right, because of COVID, the LSATs for the foreseeable future, at least, that have been put out there, the dates, they will be LSAT Flex, which means that you will be taking them from home. So they're a little bit different. You could go to the website and kind of see what they entail. They're graded the same way. So, and you will study for the LSAT Flex the same way. We already had quite a bit of students take it, the LSAT Flex, and spoke to them. And other than they reduced the amount of time and sections of the LSAT, it's pretty much the same exact exam. So please just make sure that you go there, you start your account with LSAT. So dates and deadlines. First of all, the cost of the LSAT is $200. The next LSAT is going to be on November 7th, and the deadline to register will be September 23rd, which is tomorrow. So if you are thinking of taking the November LSAT, please make sure that either tonight or tomorrow you go on to alsac.org and start your account and pay the fees so that you are able to register for the November 7th LSAT there. So please make sure we get that in there. I know we had this question asked earlier, deadline were admissions deadlines, and just remove it out of here. So our application deadline for San Joaquin College of Law is going to be on June 30th, 2021, and that's for the fall 2021 semester. It always falls on June 30th. Now, this year we extended the deadline because of the whole COVID and them canceling the LSATs until they came up with the LSAT Flex. So, you know, I'm not saying that things could change, but we're definitely flexible because we understand the situation with this whole COVID pandemic that's going on. But just keep that in mind, though. Don't wait for the last second to try to take the very last LSAT, right? The last LSAT that we take is the June LSAT. This year we took the July, and that's because of the pandemic, how it happened, and had to extend it. But please don't wait for the last minute. You could take the LSATs up to 3 times in one administration year. You are only able to take the LSAT 7 times in a lifetime, right? So just make sure that when you're ready and you study for it, you paid for it, and you take it, you have 3 chances to take it there within an administration year. And I think that was one of the questions, how often are you able to register? Yeah, 3 times within administration year. So the administration year goes from, I believe, June to the following July. So just keep that in mind. And those are our deadlines for that there. The cash report. So this is another fee that you would be paying with CAS, with the Law School Admissions Council, and that is the Credential Assembly Service Report. That is $195 that you would be paying to them as well. And so pretty much they're going to be grabbing all your information and putting it together to then send to us. Because even though we get transcripts right from you, that's for us to have. When you submit all your transcripts, they will tally up and give a cumulative GPA. So your GPA that they send over might be higher, might be lower. It just depends on the courses that you took in your undergrad as well. So there's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, the other last piece there that you have to pay for is the law school report. The cost there is $45, and it's just something to be aware of, that those costs are there for starting your law school application, going through the process. What I always like to recommend is study for the LSAT. Get your books, go through Khan Academy, attend our LSAT prep night forums, and then also pay for the LSAT, right? And see where you're at. Make sure you give enough time for the study for the LSAT, because it's not an exam that can just simply sit down for it and get a great score. I mean, there is people that I've heard stories of. I've never met someone like that. Just about everyone that I've talked to always studies for it. So keep that in mind. And then finally, we get to talk about finances, right? Our 86 units, right? It's $975 per unit. So roughly, when you add that up here, that's 3-year. But whether you do the 3-year or the 4-year option, you're still gonna be paying the same amount, about $83,850, and that's just for tuition and fees, right? Cost of living, obviously, you get that too. Because we are a WASC accredited institution, you do have the ability to get those loans, federal loans, right? That give you the low interest rate, and you don't have to pay until you graduate from the school. And then once you do graduate, right, you're gonna have the ability to have the 10-year forgiveness plan and whatnot. So this is something to keep in mind. I have another question here. It says, how long after submitting an application will one find out about the admissions decision? Well, the answer for that is they meet every Thursday of each month, okay, to start admitting applicants once they are completely done, right? So that means that we must have an LSAT in file, that you paid your cash report and your law school report, submitted all the transcripts and whatnot. So once everything is completed, say you finished early in the month, the chances that you get to the next committee are pretty high. We are on a rolling basis. Therefore, as soon as one file is complete, LSAT score and all, they'll go to the committee. So that hopefully that answers that question. So to me, the best part of tonight is getting to hear from students, because I haven't been in law school. I do sit in a class. I actually sit for Professor Mark Masters' class this year, and I'm getting to see firsthand what it is to go to law school, although I don't get the full experience. Now, how do you, as a prospective student, make up your mind, right? Whether a school and the culture is right for you. I always say, talk to an alumni, talk to a student, right? So we facilitate this tonight. Students that we have here is going to be Jessica Jaramillo Perez and Ashley Emerson and Raul Magana. They're going to do this next portion where they get to tell you a little bit about them, what law school is like, and then you'll also be able to ask questions. So please, while they're talking and whatnot, just go into the Q&A. You have a question, and we'll be sure to get to it as soon as possible. So with that said, before we move on to the next portion, I would like to provide a poll, and this is primarily for recruitment. We do this so that we are able to see how we could best serve you. So if everyone could please just complete this poll, I'm going to give a few minutes for you all to do the polling. In the meantime, I am going to be getting our panelists on to this side. Ashley. Thank you, students, for being here tonight. We're just kind of waiting on the polling there, so we could get it all in, and then we'll start the next portion. And I'm actually going to hand it over back to you, Professor Masters, once this polling is done.
Sounds good.
Remember, once again, tonight is primarily to hear from the students. So as a attendee, if you have any questions, feel free to, as they're speaking, just put it in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we get to answer your questions as soon as possible. Give it another few minutes here. All right, gonna close the polling. Thank you all for participating. All right, Professor, the floor is yours and the students.
Sounds great. All right, thank you very much. So I just want to welcome Ashley, Raul, and Jessica. Thank you for showing up and taking time out of your days. I know life gets in the way, and especially now with COVID and everything else, everything is kind of topsy-turvy. So again, I just want to thank you all for coming and participating tonight and kind of working with us in order to answer some people's questions. So first, I'd like to start off. So if I could I get a little bit of biographical information about you? In other words, what was your academic background before you came to law school? Do you have children? Do you work full time and go to law school at the same time? Things of that nature, that sort of thing, just to kind of give people watching an idea of of who you are and the very different backgrounds that you all have. I'll start off, I guess, with Jessica.
Yes, hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a fourth-year student, so this is my final year. I graduated from UC Merced with a bachelor's in political science. I do have two kids. Right now, they're 4 and 5. When I started, they were just turned 1 and 2. I've been working 30 hours since I started law school, so technically not full-time, but a little bit more than part-time, I'd say.
No, I think 30 is full-time, I think. So no, you're right there. So what was it like kind of balancing the needs of law school with, having very young children, especially at the beginning, and of course work at the same time? I mean, that's a tremendous amount of effort. I mean, how did you manage that?
The only way I think you can manage something like that is by having a very tight schedule. So I've always been very, very, especially that first year, I think that's the most important thing. And the biggest thing I'd recommend is having a schedule where you are just set. Like, I knew if you asked me what time on Tuesday at 2, what are you going to be doing? I could tell you exactly what I would be doing, because that's just how tight my schedule was. It had to be in order for it to work out.
No, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. I mean, and that the thing about law school is that, I mean, and certainly Ashley and Raul, you can also testify to this, is that law school is very time consuming. And for those of you who've actually had me as an instructor, I always liken it to basically the worst relationship you've ever been in terms of demanding all of your time, all of your money, all of your energy, and basically just making you tired and crazy the whole time. So, but that is, I think that's an apt metaphor for law school. So now that you're kind of at the end or nearing the end of the road, can you say, was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. There's like no doubt about it. Yeah, like this is just the best decision I've ever made for myself and for my family. So yeah, I would do it all again in a heartbeat.
Oh, good. Okay, that's very encouraging. Thank you, Jessica. I'll definitely be asking you more questions, but just kind of want to move along. Raul, if you could explain a little bit about yourself and kind of your background before you came here to law school.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, so you're in the Lincoln Memorial now.
Yes, I'm a time traveler. Yeah, so my background is I'm born and raised here in Fresno, California. I grew up here my whole life. I'm actually first generation family here. Both my parents are from Mexico. After I graduated high school, I did a 4-year tour in the Marine Corps. After I came back home, went to school for a bit, and then became a police officer for a local city here. So I did 7 years with them, and then I also have 3 years of law enforcement experience on the federal side. And now I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Nice. Okay. So while you've been in law school, basically, you've also been employed at the same time and kind of, managing work, school, basically kind of like Jessica has too. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I work full-time for the Department of Veterans Affairs, so I work Monday through Friday schedule, 8 to 4 schedule. I'm also still in the military reserve, so I do that once a month, 1 week in a month as well, too. And also I have a family who I have to, just like Jessica, I have to find sometimes babysitters, very tight schedule to be able to manage your school time and your family time. You just have to dedicate, I think, always like a day or a week with your family and have it set up for them.
No, but I completely, I definitely, it is difficult. I mean, to have kids and to manage everything else. But I mean, the thing is though, and so you're a 4L now?
Yes, I'm a fourth year student. Yes, it's been that long.
It's been that long.
Yeah.
Okay. Raul and Ashley actually were former students of mine. So I remember their first day of law school, actually, when I was inflicted upon them. So anyway, thank you, Raul. What's that?
Okay. I say when you say that the faculty at the school are very helping towards the students, they're true, because you actually took the time on the weekend one time to come in and help me with the paper I was writing. I was having difficulty time, and you took time on your Saturday to come help me. So yes, the school does help you out quite often.
Well, and I think that's a good point. I mean, I think it's very important as a faculty member to support your students as, to the fullest extent possible. I mean, that's really, and I know a number of other faculty members who also agree and will also adhere to that same idea. And that is kind of one big difference between this school and certainly where I went to law school. So definitely, no, that's absolutely correct. Thank you, Raul. Ashley.
How's it going?
How's it going? So your background was what?
So my undergrad was at Fresno State University, which probably a lot of people identify with. I grew up in the Central Valley, but I was not from a family of attorneys. I don't think anybody in my family, anybody I'm even related to, is had any background in law. Some background in law enforcement, but nothing in law. My grandma's side's from Oklahoma. On my dad's side, my mom's side's from Mexico. So just kind of a lot of agriculture in my family. But I busted my butt in my undergrad to finish my communications major, and took the LSAT and was able to qualify to come to law school. And I've just been trying to hit the ground running ever since.
It's interesting you use that aphorism, hit the ground running, because I mean, that's really kind of what law school's all about. I mean, especially if you work, because you work too, also, if I remember right. I mean, certainly, your first year, I distinctly remember you still working. And
yes. Yeah, when my undergrad, I was pulling about 30 hours a week as a field lead for Hewlett Packard. I was driving around to different stores, which when you're on the road and when you're managing employees, you don't really have time to fit studying in there. So working, it was either work or, go to school. And so my second semester, about halfway through, I resigned from that position and I got a position at the school as a library proctor. And that gave me a lot more time closer to home and a lot more time to focus on studies, which I don't regret. Definitely some sacrifices there, but I'm the type of person that I needed more time with my studies. There's some people that can do it all, but I have to know my own limits.
And that's a very important point. I mean, and it is not uncommon to have people start off in law school working, say, 35 hours a week, 40 hours a week, and then, kind of gradually kind of taper that down as law school kind of takes over your life, basically. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. I work part-time through law school, and I mean, I definitely drew down on my hours first semester, first year, as I progressed. So, I mean, it definitely did that. So, okay, thank you, Ashley, for telling me that. And, and yes, you are a library proctor, so you've actually been around me twice, both in class and also in workplace. Okay, so my next question is, so what motivated you to come to law school? Why? Why do all this, Ashley?
The motivation kind of hit me like a brick wall. Some people kind of grew up knowing what they wanted to do. And I always thought, well, I should just do whatever I grew up wanting to do. And it turned out not to be what I should be doing. So in my undergrad, I actually saw Francisco at a little table at Fresno State. And I was like, we have a law school? And I was like, well, that can't be a coincidence. So looking into it, visiting the courthouse, learning more about the law, I became very interested very quickly instead of, kind of drawn to it over time. And especially now that I'm in it, I really do think it's for me. And there's so much to do in law. So even the area of law that I think is for me, that can change too. That's what a law degree does for you, right? So.
Very true, very true. I have a number of questions in the chat. I will get to them. I promise. I just wanted to kind of go into, kind of this into the background motivations of the students, and then I'll definitely get to those questions. So I am reading the questions, so don't worry about that. So Jessica, why did you want to come to law school?
I've always been interested in being an attorney. I don't really know where, honestly, I can't tell you where that interest was born. I just remember watching Judge Judy when I was really young and thinking, that the courtroom scene looked kind of fun. Obviously, like, that's all dramatic and TV, but that was where I first remember being interested. I am from Merced, so I live in Merced, which is about an hour away from Clovis. And I interned in Merced with the criminal law office during my undergrad. So that just kind of made my interest grow and then be like, this is definitely where I want to be. This is definitely what I want to do. And just like Ashley, I just happened online to come across San Joaquin College of Law. I went to a Law School 101 forum. So I got to see the school, this was pre-COVID, obviously. So I got to be in the school, in the classroom, look around, and I just felt like it was a good fit. And that's kind of how I ended up there.
That makes perfect sense. Raul, same question.
That's actually going to law school has been one of my main goals. And I guess since I was a kid, I used to tell my mom, I want to be in the military, I want to be a police officer, I want to be an attorney. So when I grew up, I went, obviously, out of high school, went to the Marine Corps and did that, came back, became a police officer. Once I became a police officer, that was still in the back of my mind about being an attorney. And also, obviously, being a police officer, you go to court a lot. So going to court and testifying, I interacted with a lot of the attorneys there. And that's what sparked my interest again in becoming an attorney once more, because I can see the way they can help people, and the jobs that they do is very, very important. So that's what interests me back in law, in a law degree.
Thank you for that, Raul. I appreciate that. So one question we had actually from one of our viewers is that, we emphasize the difficulty involved in law school, the challenges, that sort of thing. So what I really want to do is I kind of want to ask you guys, what makes it so challenging? And I'll start with you, Raul, is, what makes law school more challenging, let's say, than college, for instance, or things of that nature? What is it that's unique in particular about law school and the law school experience?
I think one of the main things for me that was when you come to class and the teachers, the professors giving you a lecture on, for example, torts, and they're talking about battery or assault, and they give you all the elements of what it consists of. You're gonna have to be able to recite those back and examine. And when she gives you like a fact pattern, be able to see the fact pattern and pull out the facts that you need to apply what you've learned. And like for a battery, if you see someone hitting somebody, be able to pull that and analyze and give a specific answer to what they're asking you, not just put random stuff on a paper like I used to do when I used to go to college and be able to hope that professor gives me a passing grade. It's not like that.
Oh, okay. Jessica, how would you describe a law school class? You know, for instance, you know, first day of class, let's say this semester, I think you're probably enrolled in remedies now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So your first day of remedies, you know, how, you know, in terms of how did you prepare for that first day? And then how have you prepared for all the subsequent class sessions? Could you kind of walk us through that process?
For remedies?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Actually, that's for any class, really, for any of the subjects.
okay, because it's way different. When you're starting off, I think one of the things that makes it hard is that you don't really know what they're expecting from you. You just know that you had, you know, an assignment to do a bunch of reading, and you're reading cases. And at that point, you still don't really know what they want you to be pulling from these cases. So you're thinking, you know, I need to just know as much about this case as I possibly can. Because they're going to ask me questions about it, and I don't even know what kind of questions they're going to ask. So I pretty much need to know every single case like the back of my hand. That was my mentality, and that's what made my first year really hard, figuring out what exactly the professors want from you. Now, you know, being in my fourth year, obviously I figured out what you guys are looking for. So the preparation is a lot different because now I do the reading, but while I'm doing the reading, I know exactly what I'm looking for. I can narrow the issues a lot easier than before. And I know I'm prepared with, I have an idea of what the professors are going to ask me in class, so I already kind of am prepared for that. So I do think that your first year is a lot harder than your last year. A lot of it is that unknown, you know, what are they going to ask for me? The workload, I think, is a lot different too, because like Raul said, when you're an undergrad, they ask you to do reading, and let's be honest, a lot of times, you know, you don't have time or whatever, you don't do it, and you really don't see an effect in your grade because you're still able to write that essay, you're still able to take that final exam, and everything turns out fine. In law school, it's a lot different. If you don't do the reading assignment for one class, you're behind and you need to catch up or you are not going to pass, like, period. So that's another hard lesson.
Oh, absolutely it is. And, you know, and the thing is, you know, you mentioned that, you know, the thing you study are actually cases. So basically the primary thing that you study and that you read in class are actually judicial decisions from other court cases, right? I mean, that's kind of the basis of what you're reading. Why is it that you read these old cases from, let's say, Colorado from the 1970s? You know, why do we care?
Yeah, these cases are like the building blocks of what the law is now. So you're learning the law, you're learning why, you know, battery has the elements that it has, what decisions led to that. You have to, that's your basis. That's what the bar is going to test you on. So, you know, before I forget too, I think one of the things that makes this reading a little bit harder is the fact that you're reading cases from sometimes the 1800s. And, you know, they used, attorneys and judges, they've gotten better over time, but back in the day, they would talk very fancy. They have terminology that's difficult to understand sometimes, and those cases can get really long. But I mean, you understand why you're reading. I understand now why we read what we do. It's because those are the building blocks for what the law is today. And it teaches you how to apply law to modern day problems too. They're still very relevant.
Right. No, no, that's absolutely right. I think that's absolutely correct, Jessica. I mean, that's really kind of, you know, the foundation of law school is that you actually not only learn the law from reading prior decisions, so you learn these general concepts, but in addition, you're also developing a skill that you will use as a practicing attorney. No one on earth knows all the law in a particular area. You can't know all the cases. You can't know all the statutes. Nobody knows all that stuff. However, you do learn how to find the law, which is to say, you read other decisions, you read other statutes, and you're able to interpret them, to take out the things that you need in order to build your arguments. That's a difficult thing to do at first. That's not an easy thing, and that's ultimately why we use what we call the case method, which is to say, we make you read cases. You know, it's not just because we're cruel, although that is part of it. But the thing is, you know, we also, you know, make you try to think and to understand and to, you know, as, you know, the old saw is, to think like a lawyer. Because unfortunately, you know, when you're out in practice, you know, the answers are not always obvious to whatever issue or whatever problem you're dealing with. Ashley, let me ask you this. So when you first started in law school, about how many hours a week were you spending on studying versus hours a week you spent actually in class?
I mean, the golden rule that they kind of would try to tell us was it's going to be like 2 to 3 hours for every hour of class time that you have. And if you start out on the 4-year program and you're in 4 classes, each 3 hours each, you know, you see those hours start stacking up really fast. I think for me, it kind of changed every week. But if I had to put a number on it, for me, it was kind of like a full-time job. It was getting really close to 40 hours a week. I tend to read very thoroughly. I like to look at surrounding texts around the cases. So you can read, you know, the assigned reading the case, but then there's sometimes if you don't understand it, there's other notes and stuff you can read. Because something that's different about law school is they want you to come to class kind of like you already have a handle on it. Not that they're going to teach you, they're just going to kind of refine your understanding. They kind of want, especially your second year, they want you to kind of have an understanding of it already coming in. So I myself put a lot of hours in for my reading just so I could have that solid understanding before class. Because if I didn't do it then, it wasn't going to happen.
No, that makes perfect sense. So let me ask you this then. So law school, you know, is there's another question actually from the chat in that they're asking if any of you had taken internships or if there are paid internships or anything along those lines. So I'll start with you, Ashley, kind of work my way back. So with Ashley, so have you interned while you were in law school, either for credit or for pay or anything along those lines?
Yes. So I did the summer internship with the New American Legal Clinic. It was kind of half of a class and then half of a clinic for immigration law and immigration processing and petitions.
Okay.
The position I was in was just an internship. But I do believe that one of my classmates is doing a paid position. And it might also count for units. And there are other positions like that too. Like I know if you qualify for federal work study, that opens up a lot of paid internships. And they might be minimum wage, but getting that unit for your classes, getting, you know, two birds with one stone, that's really helpful. But I have to do internships because I'm in the accelerated program. But even if you weren't going to be in the accelerated program, I'd say that do it. And SJCL has a great way of connecting you with those internships, and take them if you can, because that was my motivation to keep going, believe it or not. Some people think like, oh my gosh, it must have been overwhelming doing that with school. But for me, it was like, no, this is why I'm here. This is my motivation to keep going. So SJCL does give those opportunities or network you to them outside the school.
Excellent. Jessica, did you do any internships?
I was already working with the attorney when I've been working with the same attorney the whole time. But I will say we are constantly getting emails from the school about job openings, about local law firms looking for clerks, looking for researchers, looking for I forgot what it's called, paralegals, I think. So we're constantly getting just these emails. So the opportunity is there. There's a lot of local attorneys that are glad to have us in their offices. We make their lives easier, and they teach us more than we could learn in a classroom about any particular area. Like Ashley, I did the New American Legal Clinic for a summer internship there at the school. That's a great opportunity. That's in the school, so you don't even really have to, you know, go apply anywhere or look for anything else. You just sign up for it. If there's enough spots, then you're in. And the current director, she's amazing. She teaches so much. Like, you learn so much from her. It's a very valuable experience.
And, you know, kind of build off of what you just said, Jessica. I mean, personally, I think doing internships in law school, even if they are an unpaid internship, I think is an invaluable portion are part of the law school experience. I mean, because it's one thing to sit in a class and to learn the law for the law's sake, which is to say kind of the intellectual idea of the law. Seeing it in actual practice, though, working at a law firm, working at, say, NALC, or working for a nonprofit, or anything along those lines, you actually get to see the law actually implemented in the real world. And it's a very, very different thing. And it really, it gives you a much more well-rounded appreciation for the law and for how things work, because you'll learn these kind of abstract concepts, but without seeing how it actually manifests in the real world, generally speaking, you're not, it doesn't really register. At least not as strongly as it does if you're actually working in a field. So now you've also had, because you've worked in a law firm, I mean, you've also kind of seen it up front as well. So, I mean, you can definitely do that. I mean, can you say that going to law school has definitely enhanced what you take away from work on a daily basis?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's like night and day, honestly. I was already in the field for a little bit when I started law school, so you feel like you already kind of know, but in reality, until you go to the classes and you learn to think like a lawyer, which is an actual thing, it's just so different. Now, your problem solving skills get way better. You're narrowing in on what matters versus what you think matters. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's been really different.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, it's true. Raul, did you do any internships or anything like that?
Yes, sir. I'm currently doing an internship with Miles Harris. It's an unpaid internship. He has a criminal defense firm.
Oh, okay.
So
How's
it's
it going?
pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So I can see the other side now from a different perspective of what I used to do before law enforcement compared to now to criminal defense. So yes, and then just from learning from classes I've had, you receive evidence and you go into the evidence, you're thinking, well, how was this evidence was handled correctly? That's kind of stuff that you use from school and be able to apply it in those internships.
So theoretically, Raul, I mean, let's say hypothetically you were never really going to you never practiced law, let's say, and you wanted to go back into law enforcement. Do you think having a law degree would absolutely assist you in in furthering your career in law enforcement?
Oh, definitely. I've been approached by some of my the prior agency I used to work for, and they've said I was welcome back, especially with the law degree, to be able to help them out and be in a supervisor position. And also, even at work, what I do for work with the Veterans Affairs, I've been approached by them when I finished law school. They have other opportunities for me just by having a law degree.
Yeah, and that's the thing to also consider is that, I mean, simply because you go to law school and you get a JD, you don't have to actually practice law. I mean, that's the thing is the degree itself opens up a lot of doors, and doors that you may never really have thought about being open or that sort of thing. And it really, it's really fundamentally, it really, like I said, it's a backstage pass to a lot of areas in life and to a lot of doors that, previously wouldn't necessarily have been open to you. So, I strongly emphasize that, practicing law is not the end all be all necessarily. So that's, something to kind of consider. Okay, so another question. I don't. This is going back a ways for some of you guys, but so a question here is: how long did you study for the LSAT? You remember, Raul?
I think I studied maybe like a month and a half before it, and I had actually took the LSAT twice because the first time I didn't do very good. So the second time around, I studied about this maybe 2 months, but it was a kind of maybe about 4 hours a day where I was putting into to study for it because I didn't do very well my first time.
Okay, let me ask you this: knowing what you know about law school now, okay, how much time would you dedicate to studying the LSAT if you had to do it again?
If I had to do it again, I'd probably at least 3 months of studying. That's for me because I'm sometimes more of a slow learner, slow reader. So for me, it would be 3 months and at least 4 to 6 hours a day. That's if you want to get a good score on it and not have to worry about getting that score when it's a low score.
Yeah, and so I mean that's kind of mirrors the commitment then that you would have to do just for regular law school in general. I mean, broadly speaking. Jessica, how about you? How long did you study for the LSAT?
I think a month is a fair estimate. I think a month is a good you kind of like Ashley said earlier though, you have to kind of gauge yourself, if you learn things a little bit quicker, a little bit slower, what your study habits are like. So I'd say for me a month I think was what I studied. And I only took it once. So that's what I would recommend, at least a month.
Okay. And about how many hours a day would you say? 4 hours a day, 5 hours a
Yeah,
day?
I would say anywhere from 4 to 5 is good
Okay.
estimate. It's been a while, but
Well, yeah, I know it has been a while for you guys. Ashley, how about you? How long did you study for the LSAT for? Or what approach did you take in studying for the LSAT? Let's put it that way.
It was kind of strange because there was nothing at Fresno State really offered like, here's your pre-law program or class or anything. And so I literally got a book from, I think it was like Barnes and Noble or something. And I just kind of read the book for a few weeks, trying to just teach myself maybe a couple hours a day. But the testing date that I had, it was like right in the middle of the school year. So I didn't dedicate as much time as I wanted to. If you want a more like competitive score, then yeah, it's going to take that much time. But I just wanted to get into law school. So my score was nothing to brag about, but I got there. So
then that's what counts. And that's what counts. So we also have another question here about asking, is there a culminating project, research paper, a thesis, something along the lines of, kind of grad school for law school? And, well, what do you think, Ashley? I mean, I know the answer, but.
Well, the answer is no. I mean, we used to have a law review where over the course of a year, you could develop a research paper kind of, and it kind of was like a thesis because you would have to expand on the research, but that kind of recently got disbanded because it was very narrow in scope. But honestly, every single class is kind of its own thesis paper, because at the very end of every class, almost all of your entire grade is based on an essay that you get usually 3 hours to write, and that's your grade for the class. So I guess your cumulative paper could be studying for that test. I mean, no one likes this reference, but honestly, like they reference it all the time in those like Legally Blonde movies where they like do outlining sessions and they're just these big study guides basically they make themselves. That's your cumulative paper for every class, because most classes are going to run year round. They're 2 semesters. So I think hopefully that answers your question. That's kind of as close as it gets.
I would also, wager that, if you really want to think of a culminating thing, I mean, of course, the natural culminating thing is the bar exam. I mean, that's really, for those of you who actually want to practice law, I mean, that's it. I mean, that is the 800-pound gorilla at the end of this entire process. And, and I will say, when I passed the bar the first time, but in order to do so, I mean, it took me 3 consistent months of study for 8 to 9 hours a day, every single day with no days off. And that included New Year's Day. That included Christmas Day. That included, a lot of other holidays, celebrations, everything. It doesn't matter, because that is what the bar exam is, because it is that difficult. I will say the bar exam is a fair exam in that, if you put in the effort, if you study enough and everything else, you will pass. I absolutely believe that. The problem is having the will to do it. And in some ways, it's kind of like a microcosm for law school itself, because you have to be determined. You have to maintain, your focus and your intensity, throughout law school. And that can be a difficult thing to do. So I kind of want to turn it over to you guys a little bit. Jessica, for instance, so what has kept you going? What is the motivation that has kind of kept you in the game, so to speak?
Well, I have kids, and I feel like that's the biggest motivation that you could ever have. I want to do better for them. so it was hard. Like I said, my daughter, she had turned 1 in July, and I started law school in August. I got to see her first steps on a cell phone during break from one of my classes. My husband had sent me that video of her taking her steps. Those are really hard moments, but at the same time, those are those moments that just kind of light a fire under you, because it reminds you, like, this is the child that I'm doing this for, or these are the children, whatever. You know, if you don't have children, I've heard a lot of my friends who don't have children say they do it for themselves, and they feel like that's enough motivation. And I feel like that should be enough motivation too. I do it mostly for them, but I also know that personally I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was a little girl, so I kind of, you know, do it for that little girl too.
Cool. No, of course. How about you, Raul? What's kind of kept you going?
I'm kind of the same with Jessica. It's mainly all my boys. My youngest boy, he always told people, "Hey, my dad's a police officer," and that, you know, he lives telling people that. And then when I started law school, he always tells people, "Hey, my dad's in law school now." And it's kind of one of the things I don't want to let him down, and I don't want to let myself down as well either. But that's what's kept me going.
No, that makes perfect sense. Ashley, how about you?
I don't have kids, but you know, I switched majors in my undergrad probably 3 times. I lost track. And I think what keeps me going in law school now is I'm enjoying it. I'm learning so much, you know, I'm growing so much, but I think most of all is this is what I see myself doing. This might be the only thing I can do. So I better just do it, you know? And, you know, my motivation is just the light at the end of the tunnel to pass the bar. You know, and to really start that life, you know. I'm done being a student.
Sure. No, I understand. And, you know, and I will say that in many respects, the second hardest semester in law school is probably your final semester, simply because you want to go, you're ready, you're ready to go. And at the same time, partway, at least through that semester, you're studying for the bar as well. So, you know, that is also an additional kind of drain on the limited amount of time you have to do anything anyway. So that, you know, so kind of balancing that out can be very difficult. So that's why I always say the last semester is second really only to your first semester. The first semester is pretty difficult. Okay, so we got another question here. So are any of the courses online, or are they all in-person sessions? Broadly speaking, SJCL, at least historically, has been in person. That's, you know, we've had in-person courses. Of course, with COVID, you know, now pretty much everything is through Zoom. And, you know, let me ask you guys, how have you guys been adapting to the switch over from in-class instruction to online instruction? And how's that been working out for you? I'll start with you, Raul.
I think I had a bit of a learning curve to be able to sit in class and watch a computer screen and be able to act like I'm in class. It was a little bit hard in the beginning because you don't have that presence, at least in class learning experience. But now it's been a few months now, and we be able to get a hang of it. It's just like before, just go in class, the professor speaking, and you just take your notes for your outline, and it's continue on just like a normal course.
How about you, Jessica? Has there been any kind of learning curve?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like for everybody it was hard because honestly, you know, I'm not gonna lie, you feel you're at home, you feel more comfortable, it's easier to sew now. I have children, like I said, my husband does his best to keep them at his mom's house as long as he can. But you know, these courses, if you're taking night classes, they end at 9:30. So eventually, you know, they'll come home and you kind of have to like just drown that noise out. I do my sessions when they're home in my room, and I close the door, I lock it. They kind of know now that that's mommy in class. But at first, they didn't understand that. They were like, mommy is home, mommy is here to serve me. Luckily, you know, I didn't have a choice. I would mute myself. At first, we didn't know if we were going to be able to do that. And I was just like, please, like, let them not change that rule because they're going to hear my daughter banging on this door for me to let her in. So I think that was the hardest thing. But like everything else, you get used to it, and you kind of have to remind yourself that if you don't take it serious now, whether it's in person or through Zoom, you're going to have a lot of catching up to do. You're going to have to learn this stuff when you should really just be refreshing yourself on it. And that's not going to make anything easier. So as long as you remind yourself that, you're able to do what Raul said, you're able to just sit there, listen to the professor, take your notes, and it's just another day.
How about you, Ashley? How is it adapting? Especially since you're in the 3-year program, right? So, I mean, you're in an accelerated curriculum, so you really have a lot of classes to juggle.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when we had in-person classes, when you have that many classes stacked, it was a lot of driving back and forth to the school. What was nice is when we had in-person classes, we could stay there between classes, either study in the library or study in an empty classroom. But now that everything's online, it's different, but I think for some people it's actually more helpful because I have 2 screens at home that I can use, so I can have like my notes on one screen and then, you know, other notes, and I can have my, you know, Westlaw research up, like, you know, I can have a lot of things going on at home. And, you know, I'm less distracted by what my classmates are doing. I just turn on speaker view and have my professor right there, you know. So I think there's definitely good and bad things for both. But the thing that I would say is don't get hung up on whether it's in person or online. And the reason why is because the attorneys right now, they had to adapt too. You know, their session in court being held online right now. Like judges are like, what? Like, this is not how we do things. You know, like law is like the most traditional thing. And then they just like threw computers at it. And a lot of these attorneys and judges, especially the older ones, are quickly adapting. And that's what being a lawyer means. The law is going to change all the time. Your environment's going to change all the time. And so for me, it was an opportunity just like, well, how do I adapt? I don't know.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, this whole COVID thing has really, it has caused kind of almost a forced evolution in law in that it is bringing up a lot more, electronic appearances in court and distance appearances in court and doing things remotely. And it is, it's a different way of doing things than the traditional practice of law, which has been around for centuries, basically, unchanged in many respects. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So let me kind of change tact or change focus here a little bit, and I want to talk about kind of the community at SJCL itself. Now, Ashley, I know you're president of DTP, right? So DTP is one of the student organizations, correct?
Yes, we are a law fraternity on campus, and we basically, well, we kind of do a little bit of everything, but especially during COVID, our goal has been to try to get the incoming class acquainted with the upper class and kind of provide like this network of support. One of the ways we do that is we provide a mentor. So, sometimes the interpretation is like when you go into undergrad and you just never know anybody. SJCL is so small that you get a chance to learn know your classmates, but also the clubs on campus like DTP and other clubs too, they're making an effort to make you feel welcome, to make you feel like you have someone to reach out to. And that's something that I don't think you're going to get everywhere else because of the size of the school and because of Fresno being Fresno, it's a little smaller too than these big cities. I think it's more close knit, which I like.
So Jessica, have you worked with study groups or worked with other students and and studying and for classes and that sort of thing?
I'm not huge on study groups just because I'm from Merced, so I live really far away. Also, with working 30 hours and having 2 children, it's not always the best schedule to be like, hey, I want to study with you, but these are the only hours I'm available. But the opportunity's there. I did study, not in groups, but my first year I had a friend who I studied a lot with, but she was from Madera, which is a lot closer to Merced. And we both went to UC Merced. So she would actually we would drive to UC Merced and meet there. That was my first year. And then throughout, there was another girl that I used to study with occasionally, you know, between classes or things like that, when we were on campus. But I do know that the school right now with Zoom, they've opened up like some virtual study groups or places where you could go either just hang out and talk to people that are going through the same thing you're going through, or specifically study for different classes and stuff. I think it is important. There's a lot of people that learn better from other students and colleagues than from a professor sometimes. It's just, I've heard that, so we're adapting.
Oh yeah, no, and you're right. We are all adapting. How about you, Raul? Have you worked with other students or study groups or anything along those lines?
Yes, I've been involved with the DTP, LSTA, and lawsuit, those different organizations on school. And I think any first year student should join as many as they can, because they all offer review sessions throughout the semester, which really, really helped me out. When I didn't understand the topic, I was able to go on a Saturday when they used to have these meetings and ask a 3-year or 4L student or something, even professors that were there, and help me understand the topics. So I definitely would encourage people to join those organizations because they help out. And to studying, I usually study by myself, and towards the very end of the semester, there's 2 of the people that I usually study with, and that's just our little group we have. It's kind of a tradition we have, and just motivate each other at the end of the semester.
You know, that's an interesting thing. So, you know, when you're actually working, you know, together, so the idea is that you're kind of, in some ways, kind of motivating each other on. So, I mean, so it's actually kind of like a friendly competition. The idea that, you know, you got to stay motivated and you kind of focus and, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, I think that's something that is fairly common at SJCL. I mean, I'll ask the 3 of you guys, you can chime in whenever you want. You know, do you see any, like, you know, hyper aggressive competition between students, you know, for classes or anything along those lines? I mean, have you ever experienced that?
I have never experienced it. It's actually, like you said, very friendly competitive, where you're asking each other questions and you don't know this, and you kind of laugh at them for a little bit, and then you start studying again. But you're motivating each other to learn the subjects, not to weed people out or trying to make put someone down.
Yeah, so one of the things that a lot of professors say is like, remind us that we're not on a curve. Everybody has the potential to do really well. Everybody also has the potential to not do well. But I feel like knowing that everybody can get a perfect score if they, you know, work hard for it, that takes a lot of the competition out. A lot of the other schools, law schools, especially like the Ivy Leagues and stuff, they grade on curves. And I've heard stories from professors who went to those schools, stories just like of missing cases in books, you know, back in the day when everything was in books and you had to go to the library to pull a case. The case would be gone because somebody had already torn it out so that nobody else could read it. I've heard stories like that. We definitely don't have anything like that here, thank goodness. We help each other. I've never ever been denied assistance from any of my colleagues if I have a question, and I've never denied them answers that I knew either.
How about you, Ashley? Have you experienced any kind of negative competition or, you know, anything along those lines?
I think the best way to characterize it, if there is any, is there's a little bit of friendly competition. I mean, everybody has to get their motivation from somewhere. There are like students that are always kind of like trying to get the highest grade in the class to get the Whitkin Award. And I've had some, you know, of my peers or even like first year students come to me really like concerned about this competition, or concerned like, well, I think that person did better than me. And my advice is, don't worry if you feel like, well, I can only come to law school if I'm the best. It doesn't matter. Come to law school if you want to finish law school. And honestly, the ultimate win is passing the bar, not how well you did on the quiz last week. That's my personal opinion. But overall, the culture here, there's just a little friendly competition. But mostly, just like Jessica said, people are always willing to help each other and answer each other's questions. I know whole like email groups start and text groups start, you know, just because trying to figure something out, you know. before everybody gives up and asks the professor, of course. But no, it's a great environment to learn in. I would say that it's not distracting or there's not high pressure. I would say it's a very supportive environment.
Excellent. So, you know what, one thing I have neglected to kind of ask you guys actually, and Jessica, maybe you can help me out with this, is that, so what is it like? So obviously you do your preparations, you read the cases, you make your outlines, you take your notes, and you prepare for class before you ever even get into your class session. But what happens when you're actually sitting there in class? How does the teacher approach the material? What actually happens?
So there's different approaches. There's some professors who do what's called cold calling. So you've read, let's say you read 5 cases for your class that day. Usually I think it's more at first, but if say you read 5, you don't know which one they're going to call on you for. But usually what happens is a professor will start lecturing. They'll start kind of teaching you a little bit about the concepts that you're going to be pulling from these cases, why they matter, how they fit together if you've already been learning about that stuff. And then they'll start calling on us. They'll call on a student to tell the class about a certain case. And while the student is talking, they'll ask questions about the case, especially if you're not narrowing in on what they want you to. They'll kind of guide you there. They're very friendly though. All of the professors at SJCL want you to be successful. They're never gonna like purposely make you feel bad or ashamed or dumb. I feel like they're very helpful in guiding you towards where you need to be. So that's really encouraging. Some professors don't ever call on you the whole class. They'll lecture the whole time. They'll tell you what you should have pulled from each case. They'll write on the board, or now they'll share screen and show you, this is the elements, this is what you should have gotten and why it matters and everything else. So it depends on the professor. But again, they're always very encouraging, always open for questions. Yeah.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think, there is some variance between professors. I mean, Ashley, you've certainly had Professor Purvis, for instance, and he tends to, oh, you haven't?
I've had him. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He just made me so nervous, but he's awesome. He's one of my favorite. He's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. But he is a very traditional instructor in that, he does what we call the Socratic method, which is to say, he'll never come out and just answer a question.
No.
He asks you questions and forces you to come up with the answers.
Yeah, and that's difficult to adjust to at first. I'm not kidding you. I would sweat in his class. This was my second year. I took him for business or organizations, which isn't even his bread and butter, but I had him for that, and I would go in there and I'd just sweat. I'd be sweating and be like, so nervous, he's gonna call on me, I'm gonna look dumb. But honestly, like, no, he never ever wants to make anybody feel bad or dumb. And in hindsight, I feel like his teaching approach makes me personally retain the matter better. So yeah, he will never answer a question for you. He'll ask you questions until you figure it out on your own. But once you've figured it out on your own, you're not going to forget that answer.
No, that's very true. And historically, that is what law professors, speaking as one, what we strive to do when we do lecture and when we do things in class. I mean, obviously we're more or less successful depending on, who we are, but I think that's definitely kind of the ideal. I'll open up to all three of you. I mean, does it really matter, generally speaking, if you are called on in class and you get it wrong or you miss the point of a case? Does it really matter in the long term?
No, I don't think it does. It actually helps you learn sometimes. If you read the case wrong and you pulled something wrong from the case, next time you're reading a different case, you're going to second guess maybe if you're pulling the right information. It will make you study harder and maybe reread that case and get it right the next time.
Yeah, I agree with him. Actually, for me personally, when I would get answers wrong, when I would miss the point, if that same issue popped up on my exam, I wouldn't miss it again. Because, the fact that you got it wrong sticks with you. Then it helps you retain it better. So some of the best answers that I gave during an exam were born from wrong answers in class.
Oh. Okay. How about you, Ashley? Any experiences similar to that, or?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all there and we're all learning together. And some people let it kind of get to them if they say a wrong answer, or they communicate. They think they know what they want to say, but they're having trouble communicating it. That's what law school's for. It's not just to teach you the law, it's also to teach you how to communicate the law. And so that Socratic method, that's going to help you learn. And that's what makes law school different. But I wouldn't say it's hurtful or anything to, learning. It's different, but yeah, that the saying goes, bet you'll never make that mistake again. Yeah, Jessica said it right. It's like you tend to that kind of sticks with you.
No, very true. So what I'd like to do now is kind of sum up, because we're kind of running to the end of the hour here. And what I want to do is give you guys just kind of a couple seconds to think about, what was your most positive experience in law school? You're all 4Ls. You're all kind of nearing the end of your law school career. So far, if you can remember, what was the most positive experience that you've had while you're at SJCL? And whoever wants to start off first, go right ahead.
I guess I'll go. My most positive experience was maybe learning that I passed my first year of law school while I was at work. I think I almost got up and I screamed. I was telling everybody, my coworkers, I passed my first year of law school, and just remembering the long hours you study on your own and on with your study partners, and that all paid off.
Okay.
That's definitely one of the best moments. I would say that the best moment for me was going into my second year, that first semester when you're preparing for your first class of the semester and you're reading the cases and it doesn't scare you. You actually understand what you're reading and you actually say, hey, like this actually makes sense. You're able to pull exactly what you need from it. That is a great moment because it shows that you've grown. It made me feel good about my decision to continue in studying law. That was probably mine.
No, that moment when the when it clicks, the light bulb goes on, and it happens with everybody. Actually, I think it just happens at different times, obviously, because everyone's different. But it does happen, and when it does, it is kind of miraculous. I mean, when you really get down to it. How about you, Ashley? What was your most positive experience in law school?
I think for me, it would have to be, I want to say semester exams or, the first year exams when I realized I passed. But I think kind of like the best memory I have is getting a preliminary essay back, which, sometimes the professors don't even grade. I think the TAs grade them. But I got this essay back and I remember putting like so much into it, but you're going to get this feeling in law school that like, no matter what you do, it doesn't feel like enough. And I got this paper back, and if it were my real grade, I would have passed that semester. And I just remember feeling like, okay, if I could do it this time, there's no other reason why I can't do it every other time. I just have to do what I just did. And that was a great feeling like, I can do this, because it's kind of scary. There were students around me that I thought were, so smart and like, they had so much experience, in their family and stuff. And then they weren't passing, and then people that were just like grinding, that were just like studying and reading and just trying really hard because they really wanted it. Those were the people making it. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do that. And so that was the best feeling. And it continues to be, seeing your hard work pay off. Definitely.
Yeah. And that's really exactly it. I mean, the one thing I can say that is a common factor between successful law students is that every single successful law student I've ever taught, been friendly with, been known, or anything else, they have all worked very hard, and they've all worked very hard consistently. And honestly, that is the key. I mean, that is really what it is. So, I mean, if you are willing to take the challenge, if you're willing to take it on, you can do it. anyone, you know, really, I mean, you know, anyone can do it with enough effort, I think. I truly believe that. It's just, you know, the thing is sometimes you have to reach down deep inside yourself, but you can do it. And I will tell you, coming out on the other side, when you get that bar, when you look up online and see that you passed the bar, when you see that bar, well, they don't give it to you anymore, but back in the day, they used to actually give you plastic bar cards, and you see your name on it with that number next to it. It's one of the greatest feelings there is. It just flat is, because you've worked so hard for this thing, and it's true and it's real. And I mean, to me, you know, that was kind of the most positive experience I certainly had related to law school and everything else, is just that moment when you know you did it, when you know you accomplished it. So anyway, thank you all so much for actually for participating tonight, and turn it over to Javier, maybe ask if there's any other questions in the group chat or anything along those lines. And well, that'll be it for me. Javier, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Professor Masters. So students, thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate your time to help the prospective students probably make a great decision, right, and starting their law school journey. Appreciate it. Thank you once again. And for all of you that are out there, if you have any questions for myself, you could please put them on the chat or on the Q&A. I'm going to be on here for a few more minutes. I'm sorry about that. I just muted myself. I'm about to add our phone numbers and our emails. Myself and Diane Steele, Director of Admissions. So if you have any questions also, you could just please email us or give us a call, and we could set up Zoom appointments and meet with you all. I know it's a lot of information to take in. Again, tonight, we believe that the best portion of the Law School 101 is to hear from our students and get to hear their story, right? And get to see what it is like to be a law school student. So hopefully you all gained a lot of information from them. And yeah, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Raul. Professor Masters, thank you so much. Good night. Sure thing, definitely, Laura. Definitely, Anna, thank you. Good night, Paul. I think we're good already. Thank you so much, Professor. Great night, you too, Jacqueline. All right. All right, everyone. Good night. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you for being here.